Hello, and welcome to the Conservative Poet with me, Amanya. Happy that you're here today. Awesome episode for you today. So today we're talking about a shooting that happened about a month or so ago, and I would have covered it sooner, but I've had so much going on in reference to traveling and so on, so it's just taking me a little time to get to this. And so I want to cover this because it happened in Pine Hills where I'm currently doing some on the ground work, especially for the legislative things that's going on as far as bills and things like that go. So the shooting happened. Matter of fact, I was in Tallahassee working on legislative work, being out there in committee meetings when this shooting happened. And so it happened here, and a little girl was killed. She was 9 years old. A reporter, News 13, Spectrum News 13, he was killed, and I believe a woman was killed as well. A photographer was hurt, and the little girl's mother was also hurt. So about five people um, has been injured in all of this, shot pretty much. They've been shot by this one young gentleman, 19 years old, who's been a career criminal since he was minor, been in the juvenile system. He's been arrested many times. He has a record, drugs, having guns and violence and so on. But any event that caught up to him because he shot and killed several people, and now he's been arrested. So I want to talk about that. I'm going to show a couple of clippings of news in reference to it. And I also want to show where I went on the ground to a community meeting and where this was supposed to be discussed in reference to the shooting and everything. So we're going to go through this clip by clip, and I'm going to talk a little bit, and you're going to see some news clippings. So you're interested in seeing that? Then let's go.
Deputies took Keith Moses to jail last night. It was far from the first time the 19-year-old has been in trouble with the law. In the past few years, Moses has been arrested for armed robbery, grand theft auto, and battery, among other charges.
Regarding the individual who is charged with these offenses, I want to respond to that now because there has been a lot of conversation about, well, why was he on the street?
Orange Oceola State Attorney Monique Worrell points out that Moses has only been arrested once as an adult. About a year ago, police say they caught Moses with marijuana, but it was less than 5 grams.
When you have a quantity that low, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement does not test the substance, and that means the state attorney's office cannot prove the case.
So Worrell did not file any adult criminal charges. But long before that drug arrest, Moses was familiar to Orange County deputies. When he was just 14 years old, deputies arrested him for grand theft auto and domestic battery, according to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. 3 months later, Moses was taken into custody again for burglary and grand theft, records show. Right after Moses' 15th birthday, he was arrested for resisting an officer without violence. Then, later that year, he was picked up for his most serious juvenile offense, attempted robbery with a firearm. According to FDLE records, Moses was sentenced to low-risk residential restrictive commitment. In other words, Moses was placed into the custody of the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice, where he lived in a supervised residential facility for an undisclosed amount of time, likely less than a few months. Worrell says such programs are inadequate.
Our system was not designed to deal with children being the perpetrators of violent crime.
19-year-old man who's had all of this long, lengthy record. From what they're saying, he only had a drug offense during his adult, so I'm guessing between he was 18 at the time. I don't know. So since he's 19 now. So this case comes across your desk. You see that, and you can see that this person has had this long history of violence, criminal violence. but yet you let them go. You don't prosecute, you don't do anything. And now here you are with 3 dead bodies on your hands. And for what? When you could have seen this, and this could have probably been prevented if the prosecutor, state attorney's office really did their job. Monique Worrell, if she really did her job, this could have probably been prevented, because this man had a history, and his history is only showing you where he's going to end up. They put him in this a house where they're monitoring them. Probably didn't last very long. Nobody's really paying attention, and this guy is out there. He goes and he kills 3 people, and he shoots up 5 in total. In my opinion, that probably could have been prevented if the state prosecutor's office had done their due diligence and looked at this kid's record to see, you know what, this guy could be a menace to society. Maybe we should do something about him. But they didn't. Let's move on to the next clip.
Shannon, this is just the latest in a series of criticisms against State Attorney Monique Worrell.
And Martha, I just got off the phone with the state attorney's office, and they said they are looking through the cases that the sheriff here mentioned in that news conference. It will take some time, but they said they immediately found 2 cases that were in fact prosecuted in 2022. They also said that under the trafficking rules, you have to have a certain weight for those drugs in order to charge somebody with trafficking. They said 2 of the cases that the sheriff actually highlighted today, they didn't have the weight information they needed in order to prosecute those cases. But still, the sheriff standing by here saying that the people here need to be in jail. For what has been days of back and forth between law enforcement and the state attorney over criminal cases, it continued today with the Oceola County Sheriff saying none of the drug trafficking cases in Oceola County have been prosecuted for an entire year. Traffickers can get at least 3 years behind bars if convicted under the mandatory minimum laws.
Out of the 73 people my agency arrested in 22, guess what that number was? Take a guess, anybody? 0. That's pretty sad.
The sheriff's office laid out this PowerPoint showing the drugs and guns taken from their cases last year. And alleged traffickers of fentanyl like Lindsey Barham, he says should be behind bars, but aren't.
This needs to stop. The legislator wants traffickers in prison. When you drop the charges or you spank them on the hand, let me tell you something, that's the wrong message we're sending these people who are killing our communities.
But we are told by the state, according to the prosecutor, Barham's case had no weight for the drugs in that FDLE report in order to prove a trafficking case. This comes after 9 investigators told you in Orlando 70% of the cases where a convicted felon was arrested for having a gun were not prosecuted, also not allowing for mandatory minimums. Monique Worrell has maintained that in these cases and others, the evidence was just not there for an arrest.
So the sheriff explained that he had over 70 cases, drugs, that has not been prosecuted. Over 70? You've had 0 arrests. Well, they've arrested people, but you have 0 that has gone to jail? How is that possible? How is it possible, all of these people, and none of them, you can't prosecute not one of them? So for me, yeah, that's an issue. And so let's not forget, Monique Worrell is definitely one of the George Soros appointed state attorneys around the country. So this is what we have here in Orange County. And I do remember during the election in 2020, we weren't trying to have her in office, but with the George Soros money, guess what? She got in. So now she's doing what the rest of them are doing, failing the counties, not prosecuting, and letting things like what happened in Pine Hills with that 19-year-old boy happen. Why? Because they're not prosecuting these criminals. Now, this brings me to another thought. Ron DeSantis, our great governor, Ron DeSantis, he recently fired one of these woke state attorneys. And I'm really hoping that with this big case and what the sheriff just did in Osceola with this press conference showing the evidence of what they've obtained during their arrest, and this prosecutor is not doing her job, I'm hoping that Governor Ron DeSantis' office is going to step in and take this woman down. But I'm sure what we're going to hear is yet here is the white man trying to take away the rights of a black, marginalized, black Regina woman, because of whatever reasons. Not because she's not doing her job, but because she's diversity, equity, and inclusion, because she's diversity, equity, and inclusion, and therefore she cannot be criticized. And if you look at her record, you can't go according to that. You can only go according to her skin color and the fact that she has a vagina. So we're going to move on to the next video, because obviously this woman is not doing her job.
Don't want this to be swept under the rug and forgotten about in a few weeks. They say there's a lack of resources in Pine Hills, and they're urging county leaders to step up.
Grief-stricken, just horrifying for the families.
After 3 lives were taken and 2 people were injured in a string of shootings in Pine Hills Wednesday, the community is hurting. 19-year-old Keith Moses is the suspected gunman.
This individual doesn't represent our community.
Jay Fortune, creator of Pine Hills Talk, says his grief transformed into fear.
I'm afraid how accustomed we've come to it.
Some residents are beginning to consider it the norm, but community leaders are working to change that, like Rosemary Deal, president of the Pine Hills Safe Neighborhood Partnership.
I want the community to come out strong, numbers, banding together to push and work for a safer community.
And community leader Seven Charleston says this shouldn't be a one-time thing.
Let's not just meet because of this crisis, let's continue to meet.
Deal says her community groups plan to create a website for families to find mental health support.
Sometimes we can see the signs if we're close to a person, but we just don't know how to help them.
Charleston says city and county officials also need to step in.
There's so many things that the county has done and actually is doing, but they're doing a very poor job at communication with people who live here and people who need those resources. We don't feel like we're a priority.
Fortune says the neglect will have consequences. Without prevention, tragedy can strike Pine Hills again.
Ignoring the most vulnerable and underserved in our community is only going to make tragic situations like this more common.
And we need to be there. So a few of us were able to make it that evening to the meeting. And I have to be honest with you all. I have a couple of clippings of the meeting. I'm not going to show all of it because it's a lot. So I'll just show a couple of relevant clippings. But there was no conversation in reference to this shooting, about what took place, what happened, and what they're really going to do. They were really talking about street lights and boxes, and nothing relevant to all of the shooting that's going on and all this criminal activity. And they talked about gun violence this and gun violence that, but they don't talk about the criminals. They don't talk about what's actually happening with these people. These people are criminals. And in the news clipping, it also said that Rosemary Deals explained that she would be setting up a website for people with mental disorders and things like that. That's fine and dandy, but where do we cross the line about who's mentally ill and then who are insane when it comes to being criminals? People are criminals, not just that, they have a mental problem. And for you to go out there and shoot up all of these people, you are a criminal. And so during the safety meeting, they didn't really go on about many of the things that we thought they were going to talk about. Again, they want to place this all on gun violence. That the truth is, it's the criminals. It's not the guns. It's the people holding the guns. It's the people. It's the person driving the car. It's that's who's killing people. It's the people behind the car. It's the people behind the gun. That's who's killing people. It's the person behind the knife. That's who's killing people. It's not the weapon itself. It's the people behind it. And it's the people behind it that we need to be looking at. It's that 19-year-old boy that we need to be looking at. It's his history that we need to be looking at. It's everything that led up to this that we need to be looking at. It's his behavior in this juvenile program that they had him in. How did that go? What were the talks about that? What were the counselors thinking about him then? And they let him loose out here on the society. These are the things that we need to be looking at.
So with the latest spree of crime that we've had in our community, at the town hall meeting, a lot of things were addressed. Like, what can we do to make it better? So you heard a lot on gun control. You heard a lot about youth mentoring. And then you also heard individuals shared about, what about parenting classes? So these are all valuable, things that we could bring to the community. This will be something we can use with grant writing and to raise some funds with grant writing. So what we would need is to have like teams, like your research team, to make sure what grants are available for us. And then make sure we don't do the same thing someone else is already doing in the community. We need to do something different. Or if they're already doing it, then we need to join them and make it bigger and stronger. But one thing we don't want to do is be like going back and forth when we have the same, we're all one big community. Mm-hmm. So gun control, parenting, the mentoring the youths, lighting. That was another thing that came up, and that's something that I feel we should easily be able to do, working with our county commissioners, which would be Commissioner Mike Scott, as well as Commissioner Christine Moore. So we have invited them to come. They have an open standing meeting. Commissioner Scott was here last month. We'll try to push a little bit more to get the other commissioner to attend. But with their help, we can work together and make this happen with the lighting. Because there's too many roads and blocks that we go down, and you can see it's so dark. And if it wasn't for the neighbors with their porch light on, you may not see anything or anybody. So, when it comes to safety, I think that is extremely important. We also heard about cameras, having more cameras around the community. I know we have already started off with Balboa on Hastings as well as Powers. We got new street names lit up, and they have cameras up there, and they're solar. So this is something the county can do, and it's already begun. So what we need to do is take that and build on it until we get all of Pine Hills, because that's what we're about, the whole Pine Hills, not just a piece here and a piece there. We want the whole community to come together. And thank you for coming out. I'm so glad to see a good turnout. You can't tell from one meeting to the next. But if we all keep on coming, we will have much more
to the violence and the shooting. And that was pretty much it. And everything else was talking about lights, or the street lights, or the street box, or the lights taking too long. They got to, make a U-turn to go this way, it was just, I thought it was just a waste. I'm glad that people showed up, but what I showed up for, and what the rest of us, a lot of the people I brought in showed up for, we wanted to really have a conversation about this, and that's not what it was. And at the end of the meeting, Mike Scott, the commissioner, showed up. So I'm going to play that clip at this time so you can see what that was like.
I'm going to go on this side. Pass this down, and you can pass this down. I will get you guys names. That's not updated chart. That's the structure of the county and the mayor's office. So tonight we met with the sheriff's office. They talked about use of force and pursuits, specifically weighing the balance and whether or not they pursue someone. So as an example, if you have a stolen car, a law enforcement officer is going to try to pursue you, right? But if you give chase, they're not going to continue to pursue you. However, if someone is carjacked, they're going to pursue them based on the nature of the conduct of the crime. Just talk about how they prioritize life. And I'm going to share those statistics with you. Rosemary has emailed it out. But I just wanted to come and share some information with you like I did in the last meeting, and also show you what happened. So I get one of these. This is the agenda. 1,282 pages this time. I get one of these on Wednesday, and I have until Friday by 5 o'clock to review this. If Friday by 5 o'clock I find a problem, then I have to send a memo to the agenda development saying why I want to pull something or a particular issue. But again, every other week I'm getting something like this to review, just for one board meeting. That doesn't count the binders I get for the citizens Protection for Children, the Metro Plan. But I want to be consistent and let you guys know I'm going to share you as much information as possible, because I'm either a loudspeaker or a cheerleader for your voice. I'm only one vote. For anything we want to do, whether it's collectively, individually, you need me and we need 3 other people. And so I need you to have just as much confidence, just as much information, and just as much authority, because again, I'm a loudspeaker for your voice. I'm no more important. I may have more responsibility, but no more important. And so over the next couple of meetings, I'll be coming. I brought Michelle Frank here. I want to introduce you to her. You already met her. Thanks. Michelle's been with the county for 20 years. And I like this, I tell this story all the time, it makes you blush. But I met Michelle in jail, literally. I was doing life skills with the juveniles who were there, and Michelle was doing homework help and tutoring, and so we developed a relationship in 2007, and it's continued over the years. And so she shares my passion for working with youth and families, but more importantly, she understands the inner workings of the county, having been there for 20 years. And so her, me, you, collectively, will start to piece to see the change. But again, I'm only as good as you are. Everything positive that I've seen in every meeting, we saw the wave. Beyonce, how many meetings came for the last one about how many emails did you get for the last meeting we had for the daycare?
About 70.
How many?
70.
70. And they had 100 or so people in both rooms for an issue. And so when it does come time for the things that we want, or things that y'all want that y'all didn't get, no, I'm gonna tell you, you have to show up. I'm gonna tell you, send some emails. And again, I'm only one vote. We need 4 to make things happen. Okay? So again, sorry for being late. I've been trying to play musical meetings, musical chairs, but I'll have information for you. Hold on to that. I'll explain that more in our next meeting, but I want you guys to understand the structure. I will bring on with the names so you know who's over what department. So y'all have the county org chart, you have the mayor's office org chart. Like I said, we'll talk about that.
To him on Wednesday, and by Friday he needs to go through it, and that's just one binder. And it kind of reminds me of, again, how insufficient the government works. You know, same thing that happens at the top in Congress, where, you know, they have this bill that they're working on. It's like 5,000 pages, and they give it to the representatives like 2 or 3 days later, and then they want to vote on it. Nobody has time to go through it, and they pack it with all kinds of nonsense, and you know, they pass it, and you're like, what did I pass? I didn't even have time to look at it, because this thing is just such a huge folder. And so I thought about that with him. And if it's happening like that at the federal government, you bet it's happening same thing at the local government. Insufficient, and things aren't really getting done. So I'm hoping he will be able to do some good work as commissioner. I'm gonna be watching. We're gonna be watching to see how this thing goes, and I plan on being at the next safety meeting as well, because I think it's important for us to continue to show up in these meetings, especially on the other side, to see what it is that the community is talking about, what's important to them. And then we need to really talk about some of these issues that we're having, especially the issues with the representatives. And we need to speak boldly about these things. And I bring this up again because it's a passion, and because I'm so close to it. And that is, again, the school choice, expanding school choice right here in the Orange County area. And so that's something I want to talk about at some point at some of these meetings, to see what it is that the constituents have to say when they find out that their representative has been voting no on expanding school choice for their children. So we're going to end this video here. It's been a long one. There's been a lot of different ups and downs, but I wanted to just really showcase this because of the shootings, and because of the DA, Monique Worrell, and what she's doing, and the sheriff's office and what they're doing, and now what the community is doing, and also now with what a local representative is doing. So it's a full circle video, so I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. And by the way, we've got souls.